Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think we can start now. Is there anything anybody wants clarification from the previous discussion? All right. So up onto this stage, we've gone through all the steps that are involved in sperm development. So it is important to know of these things so that if there's a problem, if an individual for that matter, man has a problem with fertility, appreciate direction and advice. So it's not just a matter of make commentary. It's based on your knowledge in the area. So that if somebody does a certain test, you can just be able to tell that no, the result that you have obtained probably does not conform to available knowledge in the area. All right. So you need to be very, very knowledgeable in the area. It's not just a matter of doing semen analysis. All right. So that even after you have gone through this program, you now, even those of you who already know how to do semen analysis, you be able to now interpret results far better than you used to do. All right. So let's go on now. Like we said, for the previous discussion, we've gone through all the stages. All right. We know that there should be a germ cell, all right? A germ cell that can transform into a stem cell, okay? That's the spermatogonium. All right, it can behave like a stem cell because it has a capacity to renew itself. And I told you that in all areas where there are stem cells develop and they have capacity to make a decision. We call it fate decision. All right. So with the fate decision, try to, once it has divided, then it takes the decision to take one of them, either one of them randomly, to say that you go ahead and develop into the cell, the mature cell that you want it to be. And one of it go back and support the system that germinates, or for that matter, the germ cell. So you see that it is renewing itself. We call it self-renewal. All right. If that doesn't happen, then it means that all the germ cells will be dividing, and with time, they will be exhausted and nothing will happen again. Meanwhile, the whole process should be continuing until the end of life, so to speak. So that is one of the characteristics of the sperm cell, especially through its development. We've gone through that. So that initially there is mitosis. When there's mitosis, it is proliferating, it's dividing into two. And the two also divide into another two. So there's that kind of mitotic proliferation. All right. And then it is at that point that there is a decision to send one back into self-renewal, and then the other one will proceed. Once it produces, it goes into the meiosis. You know that in meiosis, we're going to now have a situation where the cell, instead of having two pairs of the chromosome, will now have only one set of the two pairs. That's the meiosis. All right. We also said that after the meiosis, there's also spermatogenesis, where now is now going to develop into a sperm. All right. And what happens? What happens is that there's a whole lot of cytoskeletal metamorphosis. What it means is that there's no further proliferation. The cell is no longer dividing, but the existing cell is undergoing a lot of changes within the cell, so that is cytoskeletal changes. When you say something eccentric, it means that it's getting to one side. So the central nucleus will now move to one side, become eccentric. You've said that now the nucleus, which seems to be homogeneous, will now become condensed, become compacted. So it become very, very compact. So that's also some of the changes that will happen. We also said that the Golgi bodies, you know that the whole thing is developed from one cell. And when you have a cell, you know the things, the organelles that make up the cell. And some of those things will include Golgi bodies, for example. The Golgi bodies will now move to the side of the nucleus. Remember, we said that the nucleus are moved to the one side, become eccentric. So it will move to cover the nucleus. And then it means that it's covering it. So once we have a cover, it forms like a cap. Okay. So although, and the cap is now made up of the Golgi bodies. You know that the Golgi bodies is hydrolytic. I mean, it has lysozymes or enzymes that will break down things. So that feature is also conserved. Then we said that the centrioles will now move out to become the tail. And we also said that the mitochondria will now move and position itself in between the head and then the base of the tail, and therefore becomes the midpiece. We have talked about all these things. And we want to admit that because the what do you call it? The mechanisms, and for that matter, the changes that take place from the germ up to the adult cell, all in all these stages, the cell development is closely attached to the Sertoli cells. Remember, we said that the Sertoli cells are the cells that are nursing the germ cells, that are helping them to develop. So it means that they are closely attached to the Sertoli cells because they are the cells that are providing the enzymes, they are providing the nutrients, they providing everything for the development of the germ cell. So they are attached to it. So at the final stage, the Sertoli cell must release the adult sperm because now the sperm have developed into a stage. And of course, at that stage, I'm sure you know what the spermatid. Spermatid initially is already round. All right. But once it is round, so you call it round spermatid. The round spermatid is not a sperm. A sperm has an elongated shape. So it must shape it itself. So it will also start from the round spermatid to become the elongated spermatid. This elongated spermatid, which is assumed to be the mature sperm, but it is still attached to the Sertoli cell. All right. So at this point, the Sertoli cell must release the mature spermatid into the lumen. Okay, and we said that is also called spermiation. So if it is finished, if the germ cell have developed into becoming a mature sperm, yet the Sertoli cell refuses to release it, that is also a problem. And we can talk about all these things. I think up to this point, you remember it's just a reflection of all that we have done so far. And so they all form part of spermatogenesis. Now, we started talking about factors that will affect spermatogenesis. All right. And I think we talked about the effect of heat. Remember, we said that spermatogenesis is heat dependent. The whole process is heat dependent. And that is why, in God's own wisdom, the testicles, which is the site for this sperm development, is outside the body. The body has a temperature of around 37 degrees. Meanwhile, we expect this thing to take place around 34 degrees. And therefore, that explains why the testicles is outside the body. We said that. So if for any reason the body temperature goes up to, let's say, the normal body temperature, then it's going to compromise the developmental process, which is the spermatogenesis. We talked too much about it. Now coming back to another factor which causes a lot of problem with spermatogenesis, and that's oxidative stress. I think the other day we talked about what is reactive oxygen species. We said that yes, the body needs a lot of oxygen. So we have oxygen in water. We have the oxygen is required to move to the side for metabolism and so forth and so on. However, we can have the oxygen, the diatomic one, which is the O2, being transformed to EDAX. It can become oxygen O3. It can become a single oxygen. Those ones are oxygen, all right. They are dangerous for the body. So we can have variety of oxygen species that are not, so to speak, they are not useful for the body. Now, collectively, they are called reactive oxygen species. I'm sure that you can mention some of them. You have the singlet oxygen, you have the superoxides. All right, we have a lot of species, but the most easier ones are the singlet and then the superoxides. We have several species put together. So collectively, they are called the reactive oxygen species. Now, the oxidative stress, what is oxidative stress? Oxidative stress is the fact that the body acknowledges that it's going to produce a lot of reactive oxygen species. The body itself produces antidotes, so we call them antioxidants, that will try to neutralize the reactive oxygen species. Now, if there are too much of the reactive oxygen species over and above the capacity of the body to produce the antioxidants, then that's called oxidative stress. I'm hoping that you are following it. The body will automatically cause some of the diatom, some of the oxygen, normal oxygen, to be transformed to reactive oxygens, which you call reactive oxygen species. These are dangerous for the body. In this situation, the body produces antidotes, so to speak, antioxidants. So they are supposed to neutralize, to mop up the reactive oxygen species so that the body doesn't go into any kind of problem. Now, if you have so much of the reactive oxygen being produced over and above the capacity of the body's production of antioxidants, then it means that there's going to be excess reactive oxygen species. And that excess is what is called oxidative stress. So once there's always oxidative stress, it is going to, of course, the word stress is going to put stress on the body. All right. So when you have oxidative stress, one of the key things they do is to damage the DNA. Remember, the DNA has been packaged. All right. The DNA has been packaged into, they form the nucleus. And when you have oxidative stress, what they do is to damage the DNA. And that's why we're saying that you can do semen analysis, all right. You do your, what do you call it? Sperm count, everything can be normal. But what if the DNA is damaged? How will you know? Semen analysis will not tell you that the DNA is damaged. So the fact that you have normal sperm analysis parameters doesn't rule out a challenge of fertility. So what you try to do is try to uh, 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 ensure that you don't have so much oxidative stress. And as you move along, you realize why probably it is recommended that somebody treating infertility may put on, let's say, vitamin C. You know, vitamin C is a very strong antioxidant. Okay, it's a reducing agent, and therefore it's an antioxidant, and therefore it has capacity to reduce the oxidative stress, because oxidative stress is just the imbalance. It's the difference between reactive oxygen species and the antioxidants. I hope you're not confused. The difference between the reactive oxygen species and antioxidants gives you the oxidative stress. So if the situation arises where there's too much overproduction of oxidative stress, then you must also add on to the antioxidants, because the body's capacity to produce antioxidants will have been overwhelmed by the increasing production of the reactive oxygen species. All right. So, and we've said that the most common cause of sperm damage or sperm DNA damage is oxidative stress. And I'm sure now you've all understood what is oxidative stress. So the parameter, if you're in the lab and you want to assess whether there is oxidative stress, then what you do? You are only going to assess the reactive oxygen species. So we have here the parameter used to assess the presence of oxidative stress in semen sample is sperm reactive oxygen species levels. I'm sure this point is very clear. If you assess the sperm reactive oxygen species level and it is high, it is definitely the case that the semen or the sperms are under oxidative stress, and therefore potentially the DNA of the sperms could have been compromised. Right. Let's look at some of the causes or the sources of reactive oxygen species. All right. Remember, before even this time, when we talked about the varicocele, we realized that with varicocele, there is increased reactive oxygen species. And we said that in that case, there is supposed to be venostasis. The blood, which is supposed to leave the scrotal area, is allowed to, because the veins are large. They don't, there's that kind of reflux. So they don't go. So there's like, they stay in there. When they stay in there, it means that they metabolize the oxygen species, which are supposed to be allowed to move out, will stay in there. And that will cause a damage to the sperm production. And also, it is likely to also cause the extrinsic sources which can generate high levels of ROS, and I'm sure ROS, reactive oxygen species, with resultant oxidative stress include. But I'm sure this statement is also self-explanatory by now, where we're saying that where we have excessive amount of reactive oxygen species, it will automatically result in oxidative stress. And been also known that cigarette smoking is known to account for reactive oxygen species, produce reactive oxygen species. The smoke will convert some of the oxygen, normal oxygen, to become superoxides or singlet oxygen and so forth and so on. So cigarette smoking is noted for causing the body to produce reactive oxygen species. That's why we're saying that if somebody is treating infertility, we advise that the person stops smoking as much as possible. This is a lifestyle. So you advise that, yes, you may have to stop smoking, because if you smoke has a tendency to cause this kind of reactive oxygen species. And that will increase the stress, what we call the oxidative stress on the testicles. And for that matter, sperm that will produce, they may be produced all right, but the nucleus, the DNA in the nucleus will have been damaged. And therefore, you may produce semen with a lot of sperms, yet the nucleus is not functioning. All right, so that is the basis for which you advise somebody who is treating, who has fertility challenges to stop smoking. Because if you are saying the person should stop smoking, and you don't give a scientific reason why he has to stop that, then probably he will say that no, I mean, he doesn't see any correlation between smoking and infertility. He will tell you that, oh, I have a friend there, he smokes almost 24/7, yet he has about 3 or 4 children. Why are you telling me that I should stop so that you'll be able to perform appropriate counsel as much as possible? And of course, cigarette smoking and air pollution, I'm sure you know they are virtually the same thing. Air pollution from combustion of coal and gasoline. I'm sure you know this. In our part of the world, sometimes you follow certain vehicles and the kind of pollution that they cause, I mean, with respect of converting a lot normal body function, especially with respect going to affect that process. Of spermatogenesis because it is temperature dependent. That's one side. The other side too is that the same temperature will cause normal oxygen to be converted to other sources, the reactive oxygen species, which now becomes also dangerous for the body. All right. Now, of course, electromagnetic radiation, the cell phones that we use. All right. So I don't know how you're going to avoid this, but the balance. I'm hoping that you're following it. You are having, and there are even some other sources. Let's see the next slide. Yes, organophosphorus pesticides. All right, and then you see those who use pesticides, fumigations, and all those sort of things. All of them, if you don't take protective measures, you don't put on some PPEs, and then you just spraying all these things. Once you inhale them, once they get into the body, they have the tendency to convert normal oxygen to uh, 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 reactive oxygen species. And then they will also increase the body's load of reactive oxygen species. And once the load of reactive oxygen species become high, then antioxidants will not be enough. And therefore, the imbalance will be tend to become oxidative stress. Leukocytospermia. Leukocytospermia, I'm sure you know leukocytes. Leukocytes are past cells in the sperm, for that matter, in the semen. So under what condition you will have leukocytospermia? Leukocytospermia. When there's an infection. Okay, so when there's an infection, you know the cytokines will be produced automatically. Now, so when cytokines are, one of the effects is that cytokines can also convert normal oxygen to reactive oxygen species. So you see that if one person, it's possible that one person could have an infection, the same person is also probably is a farmer who is also using pesticides, and then the same person also has varicocele. The same person is also using phones. The same person is also smoking. So if it's possible that one person could be subject to all these sources of reactive oxygen species, then automatically it becomes the norm that with such a person, the oxidative stress will be so high, and automatically will affect a person's fertility potentials. I hope the point is clear there. Right. So factors that affect spermatogenesis, we are also now going to look at sperm chromatin. And when we talk about chromatin here, I'm sure you know it's the DNA damage. So how does sperm chromatin damage affect spermatogenesis? Right. So we said here that when there is overproduction of reactive oxygen species, automatically that will cause an imbalance of the over the antioxidant, and therefore will cause DNA damage. Now, as we move along, we're going to talk about spermatozoa, apoptosis in spermatozoa. So once the DNA has been damaged, the body will clear it off automatically. It will signal it for death. And we will get there very soon. We're going to talk about apoptosis in spermatogenesis. Right. And I'm sure you know apoptosis. What is apoptosis? Yes, anybody? Before we get there, what is apoptosis? Anybody with an idea? Apoptosis. We're talking about sperm chromatin damage. I'm saying that we're going to talk about factors that will cause the DNA to be damaged. And already we know that one of the things that will cause it will be the oxidative stress. Program said they're fantastic. So program cell death is not necessarily equal to necrosis. Necrosis, the sperm is dead, whatever. But program cell death is said that I watched a certain video where a certain man has the capacity to see somebody who is going to die next. And it's like spiritually death is hovering around the village in the form of a cup. So you'll be there, then the man will know that the death, which is now in the spiritual realm, is like a cap, is going around and probably has fallen on the head of, let's say, Mr. A. So he knows that Mr. A is going to die, as to whatever means he's going to die. So at that point, he's not dead, all right. Physically, he's not dead, but he's been tagged to die. That's about apoptosis. Apoptosis, you are not dead, but it means that even as the cell is still there are certain factors, there are certain things which is showing on the cell to indicate that this cell will not survive. This cell will die at all costs. And therefore, I mean, that is what. So apoptosis is different because necrosis, the cell is dead already. It's dead. So apoptotic cell will die, all right. But the time that we are talking about, we're saying that it's been tagged to die, that it's not dead. That's different. So, for example, if you have a sperm whose DNA has been damaged, A lot. So once we're going to talk about apoptosis, you see that about 75%, up to about 75% of the cells, of the sperm cells, will not end up becoming, will not see the light of day. Let me put it that way. Because a lot of things will have happened in the system that will tag the cell to die. And once the cell has been tagged to die, the system will find a way of limiting it. So even though some of them will come out with damaged DNA of a sort, but about 95% of those whose DNA will have been damaged will not even be allowed to come out at all. They will have been consumed, they will have been eliminated. We'll talk about those things. You see how the body works. All right. So if you expose yourself to so much things that will cause an overproduction of ROS, what is happening is that I don't believe you are going to get low count. So what we are saying here is that we need to be, we are educating ourselves in a manner that will empower us to be able to advise patients. If somebody has low sperm count, for example, you should be able to know that if it's low sperm count, is it possible that his sperm apoptosis, is it increasing? If sperm apoptosis is increasing, then it means that a lot of things are going on that is damaging the cells in a manner that the body that they are cleared of the system. Okay, so what are some of those things? Those things that will cause DNA damage, about 80% of the time is due to ROS, reactive oxygen speed. So then you go back to find out what are some of the potential sources of the ROS, and ask the patient whether are you smoking, are you a farmer, are you using pesticides, are you a driver? So when you ask all those things, then you are gathering information that will help you to appreciate the fact that this person is exposing himself to high risk of overproduction of ROS. And once you are getting overproduction of ROS, the potential is that once it also increases, the body will find a way of eliminating them. And therefore, those ones that will come out will be low. As simple as that. These are the things that me and you, we need to, we are educators, so that you don't just say low sperm count just like that. That you will know what is likely causing the low sperm count, and therefore find an antidote, which may not even necessarily be, what do you call it, medications. All right. I hope all of you are following me very well. All right. So talking about sperm chromatin damage is a serious thing in spermatogenesis. So during spermatogenesis, results in DNA fragmentation and decreases fertility potential. This one is not about an ROS. It could be a problem in the course of spermatogenesis. Remember, we said that initially you are going to have mitosis. You move to meiosis. Then due to spermatogenesis, where the transformation. In this transformation, we expect the DNA to be packed, to be condensed. If for whatever reason the condensation process becomes challenged, then what is the level of DNA as a DFI? So even though we are not doing them in our labs, that the course is to educate us, to open up our minds that, oh, these are things that are even available. And who knows, in one day somebody may want to establish a true andrology laboratory which does a whole variety of tests to unveil or to reveal the actual causes of fertility challenges. So once you go through this program, you see that you are not just being a provider of knowledge to do semen analysis alone. It's far from that. So seminology is not about semen analysis. So you realize that what we did earlier was a workshop on semen analysis, and that was it. This is a course on seminology. So now you're going through how sperms are produced, what happens on their way, how come that some of them will start, but they don't come out, and all those sort of things. So that, and along the line, at each point, you will be able to do a test that will find out, or that will actually unveil a problem at specific sites of the developmental stage. All right, so you know, oh, if this is, I'm suspecting that the problem came from, let's say, the even at the point of meiosis. There's a test for that. I know that as you move along, you are going to go through processes like maturation and rest. What is early maturation? What is late maturation? You're going to do all these things so that you will be very much educated to be able to do a whole lot of things, and then to be able to also understand the intricacies in male fertility and so forth and so on. So please gear yourself up. Unfortunately, time seems to be running against us, but you also need to do or to learn what you have to learn. So let's move on. So then the second point is many factors are involved in inducing sperm DNA damage, which may result in male infertility. I'm sure this one, you say that one of the factors is that during the spermatogenesis, there could be a problem with the packaging or condensation. All right, which could be genetic, which could be anybody's problem. So that is a point. Now, of course, you're talking about ROS, and we've said over and over again that ROS production is the main cause of sperm chromatin damage. All right, so a lot of the time. So if you are able to reduce your ROS production, you are very, very likely to increase or to improve the quality of the sperm that will be coming out. All right. Then we also have those things that can also affect the chromatin damage. Environmental occupational exposures to chemical agents. All right. So this one we know already. If you are exposed to heavy metals and agricultural toxins, we talk about them. They all have been associated with increased sperm DNA damage. So once you know all these things, and you are helping somebody to improve the quality of sperms, then you can interrogate all these aspects and then advise accordingly. So, how to protect sperm chromatin integrity? So we've seen that the sperm chromatin integrity is very, very, very important. So how do we protect it? There are many sources that cause overproduction of ROS, which overwhelm the antioxidant capacity of semen and resultant OS. OS here is oxidative stress, leading to increase in sperm DNA damage. I'm sure this point is very clear. All right. So once the person is involved in so many things, all of which will cause an overproduction of an ROS, then you should expect that if such a person is going to have a higher oxidative stress. And we've said that oxidative stress, one of the first things they do is to cause DNA damage. So in this respect, you now appreciate that administration of antioxidant supplements, therapies such as ascorbic acid, all of us know ascorbic acid, vitamin C, alpha tocopherol, beta-carotene, retinol. These are all known antioxidant supplements. These are the things that sometimes people package them and sell them as supplements at very exorbitant prices for people if they know that you are, and sometimes they call them anti-aging. See, and then these are the things they package, and then they sell them to some of us. You don't want to age, so they will tell you this. This is how you see one of the major causes of aging is oxidative stress. And a lot of things, like you said, talk about that will lead to overproduction of ROS. Does not only affect the sperm production, but also causes a lot of damage to, we said that oxidative stress will cause DNA damage. The DNA is not just the DNA of the sperm. Any cell that have DNA could be attacked, and therefore they will cause a lot of cell death. All right. And so if you want to avoid that, then it means that you must also now increase your antioxidant dose, because the body's capacity to produce antioxidants is limited. And so people will now package normal ascorbic acid and give them, they will just call it antioxidant supplement. You wouldn't know that the ascorbic acid, which is just vitamin C. All right. Then you buy them at very exorbitant prices, and then only to call them, say that they are anti-aging so that you don't age. Right. So all that we're saying is that ROS, and now by this point, you know some of the major sources of ROS. And we said that once you have an overproduction of ROS, they overwhelm the body's capacity to neutralize through the antioxidants, and therefore will cause an oxidative stress. Oxidative stress will lead to DNA damage. DNA is not specifically sperm DNA damage. Any DNA in the system, and you know that all body cells have nucleus, and all nucleus have DNA, and they all could be attacked. The DNA could be attacked, and once the DNA is attacked, they will cause their damage, and then you know what next. All right. So these are some of the things that will also help us to be able to overcome some small problems that not necessarily about infertility, but about our well-being. All right. Still on how to protect sperm DNA integrity. While some types of herbal medicines or remedies may induce sperm DNA damage, others such as isoflavones, genesin, and equol, these are all plants. The herbal people, the other day I told you that sometimes some of them, some of the medications that we take, herbal medications, could cause sperm damage. All right. Some of them too have been known to be very good. And typical ones are genesin and equol. And they are supposed to be, like beans, like the soya beans, the flavor beans. They are supposed to contain a lot of genesin and equol. And collectively, they are called the isoflavones. All right. They are known to be very, very, very active oxidative, they are antioxidants. Yeah, so isoflavones can be used to neutralize oxidative stress. What it means here is that isoflavones are antioxidants. So because we said oxidative stress is the overload, the imbalance of the ROS over the antioxidants. So if isoflavones are neutralizing oxidative stress, then it means that they are themselves antioxidants, nothing more, nothing less. So isoflavones like the genesin and the equol, which are obtained from plant-based compounds, especially in the form of beans, the soya beans, the flavor beans, what it means is that these ones have capacity to reduce your oxidative stress. And once you reduce your oxidative stress, what it means that they will improve on the quality of sperm that will come out. because the sperm that we produce will not suffer from DNA or for that matter chromatin damage, and therefore the sperms will come out of the best quality that it should be. All right. Please, if there's something that anybody doesn't understand, draw my attention as we move on. So, as for purposes of our training, we may not be doing them in a labs, but you have to know that there's something called sperm chromatin integrity analysis. Because you said that in discussing the factors that cause spermatogenesis, you've come to know that reactive oxygen species is a killer. And once their source of attack is on the chromatin, which is in the nucleus, and for that matter, the DNA, we must be able to have a diagnostic test that will tell us to what extent the sperms that are coming out have the best quality of DNA. All right. And so we have the sperm chromatin integrity analysis. Sperm DNA integrity analysis is a better diagnostic and prognostic marker of sperm reproductive potential. How the point is clear, it looks technical, but what it means is that if you do this test, if you do the normal semen analysis, it can never tell you anything about the integrity of the nucleus, and for that matter, of the DNA. That if you are able to do the DNA test, not the DNA test as in talking about fertility, no, the DNA integrity test for the sperm, the DNA integrity test for the sperm, then if it is high, then you see that, oh, then the sperms, even if they are of what do you call the sperm count is low, yet the sperms of the right DNA integrity, they could be very beneficial, as opposed to having so much numbers in terms of the cell count, yet all their DNAs are poor integrity. What can you see the problem that several methods have been developed to evaluate sperm chromatin integrity. So whatever test that you do, if you get the established normal value is less than 10%. So it means that if you do the DNA integrity test, you show less than 10% of DNA damage.
Who knows what is good for you?
All right. So if you get less than 10% DNA damage, then it means that it is of.
You are a child, you don't know what is good. And when mommy does something, you don't talk back.
I'm supposed to meet somebody, but I'm sure everybody's muted. Okay. So let's move on. So, or like I've said over and over again, you may not be doing it here. Before you know, somebody might have done the test somewhere outside. Then it comes you as a lab scientist, it shows you the report. You should be able to have the knowledge to say, oh, yes, it's a good report. Once you have done the DNA damage test, or for that matter, DNA integrity test, and it shows a DNA damage of less than 10%. If it's 0%, then it means that all of them have good integrity. That's what it means. Because here you are talking about the DNA integrity, the damage. So the lower the value, the better for the individual. I hope that you get it. So if you have a DNA damage of 51%, hey, that means that 99% of excellent integrity. If it has, some people put it up to 15%, but the established normal value is anything less than 10%. All right. So yes, you are not doing it here, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have the knowledge. So that if somebody goes to do it outside somewhere and comes to show you the report, you should be able to tell the person what the result means. All right. So no, we write the DNA and chromatin and put it into brackets. Like when we talk about sperm chromatin, we are still about the nucleus and still about the DNA. So you can just say sperm DNA integrity test or sperm chromatin integrity test or whichever. All right. So you don't necessarily have to write it chromatin into bracket DNA integrity test. No. Sperm DNA integrity test or sperm chromatin integrity test, whichever way you want it. So let's move on. So the sperm DNA integrity analysis, a better diagnostic, as we said. Oh, I think this is a repeat. Sorry. This is the same slide. All right. No, let me go back. I think so. Like we said, the established normal value is less than 10% with sperm damage. So the normal range for sperm chromatin integrity in a semen analysis should be anywhere greater or equal to 80%. So in this case, it means that we are allowing a damage of up to 20%. But the best and excellent value will have been anything less than 10%. I think this is the difference between this slide and the previous one. So the normal value is less than 10% damage. So it means that the integrity itself should be more than 90%. But we are saying here that even though if you get 90% or 95%, that's also better. That's the best. But any value greater or equal to 80% is also considered very, very well. So the difference between the damage, which should be less than this, and then the integrity itself, which is 80%. I hope that you are not confused. Right. We said that there are so many methods that have been designed for the integrity test, sperm integrity test. Now, there's one which is supposed to be very popular. It's based on flow cytometry method. We don't, of course, we don't have it here, but for purposes of this course, we just want to mention it so that once you talk about it or somebody mentions it, you're not confused. So you have the tunnel assay or the DNA tunnel assay. The tunnel is just an acronym. And it's terminal, deoxynucleotide, transferase, mediated, deoxyridine. I mean, that's long way. Triphosphate, nick, and labeling. So just for the tunnel tests or tunnel assay, it's based on flow cytometry anyway. It's one of the best methods for DNA integrity. Now, the tunnel assay is highly sensitive. And when I say sensitive, very precise and reproducible, it's very reliable. So you see that when we have something which is precise and reliable, it is of high quality. Good. Of assessing the integrity of sperm DNA, but it is much more expensive. Remember, I've said based on flow cytometry. So it's of high technology. Right. So just a little idea about the tunnel sperm integrity test. I mean, just so that if somebody is being asked to go and do it, and he's asking you for an advice, at least you can give some preliminary advice based on what is likely to face, especially the preparations that the patient will have to go through. The man should have no infection in their genitourinary tract. You know why? Why? Why is it that when you're going to do the sperm integrity test, you shouldn't be suffering from UTI or any genitourinary tract? Anybody? When you're going to do the sperm integrity test, you should not, if you have UTI, you should treat it before. You shouldn't be suffering from UTI to go and do the sperm integrity test. Who can tell? Who can explain why? Any attempts? Why somebody is asked to go and do the tunnel sperm integrity test? And you are to advise the person. Yes, yes. Right. So the question again, I'm saying that in preparing a patient who has been asked to go and do the tunnel, I'm sure you know the tunnel. That's the test for the sperm integrity test. So in preparing such a patient, one of the steps is that this individual should not have been suffering from genitourinary tract or for that matter UTI. If the person has UTI, you cannot go and do the sperm integrity test, the sperm DNA integrity test. Why? What is the reason behind this? Person should not be suffering from UTI or genitourinary tract infection. No. Bacteria also have DNA, no. Somebody say it will defeat the it's in any yes anyone again, it will defeat the purpose of the sperm integrity test. No. How? He said that if you have an infection, infections have the tendency to also increase ROS, reactive oxygen species. And this reactive oxygen species will automatically increase your oxidative stress. Increasing your oxidative stress will automatically cause DNA damage and therefore will increase the person's percentage rate of DNA damage, and give it means that the person will give a false report. The result is that the person is going to have a falsely increased DNA damage, and that will inform the person, say the clinician that probably you have a problem with blah blah blah, which is not the case. So to avoid anything, the patient's UTI should be treated. Once the patient UTI is treated, it means that, and if at the end of the day, the oxidative stress is still high, you cannot be attributing it to the infection. Let me see the answer is coming. Clifford, you tried, but I'm sure. Yeah. Increase in ROS. Okay, infection will cause an increase in the reactive oxygen species. And increase in reactive oxygen species will also cause an increase in oxidative stress. And hello, I'm sorry, I went offline and thankfully I'm back. All right, sorry for the break. So they said that one of the things that we don't do here, which is very useful in actually assessing the true diagnostics of male infertility, is the sperm DNA integrity test. And we said that there are several methods which have been developed for this particular assay. There's one which is very commonly used called a tunnel. A tunnel is a long word which we mentioned, but once we talk about a tunnel, I'm sure it is well understood. Terminal, just the nucleotide transferase mediated, just the written triphosphate, NIC and labeling, for short tunnel acid. Right. And we said that we need to prepare the patient for it. And in doing the tests, one of the things that must be taken into consideration is whether the patient has an infection with respect to the genitourinary tract, commonly called the UTI. If the patient has any such infection, the infection must be treated, okay, before he goes to collect the specimen for the test. And I asked, why is this condition very important? The bottom line is that when you have an infection, especially those that are related to the genitourinary tract, they will cause an ROS increase. We've said this over and over again. They cause an overproduction of reactive oxygen species. And we said that once the semen reactive oxygen species level goes high, it's a marker that your oxidative stress will also be high. And we've said that the oxidative stress that actually cause a damage to the DNA. Okay, so one of the major causes of DNA damage is oxidative stress. Remember, the test is going to assess whether DNA has been damaged or not. Now, if you're already having an infection that will actually cause a DNA damage and you do the test, of what benefit will you get? So it is important that you rule out the potential for an it has to be cleared. The infection has to be treated. Otherwise, it will cause a false increase in DNA damage. Sperm from the ejaculate or testis is placed on a slide. Remember that as we move along, you're going to look at sperm retrieval, where if there is somebody has obstructive azoospermia, for example, we know that sperm has been developed. There's no problem with it, except that there's no obstruction. It means that through technology, that sperm can be retrieved, okay, surgically, can be retrieved from the test and be stored for an accident. All right. So it means that that patient whom you rule out as having azoospermia and therefore we cannot have children, will actually have biological children of his own through the sperm retrieval technique. All right. So we want to find out whether these sperms which are being retrieved is also of good quality. They have they don't have any problem with the chromatin having been damaged. So it means that the panel tests can also be done for sperms which are retrieved from the testes. So that's why we are having at sperm from ejaculate or testes. It's placed on a slide and air dried. All right. So for example, we want to bring this one in so that if the person is here and the test is going to be done in, let's say, South Africa, for example, or in UK, It doesn't need to go to UK. A lab scientist with the right knowledge can prepare a slide here for it to be sent outside for the test to be done. All right. So you prepare just a slide, and then the specimen is allowed to dry, air dry, of course. And then once you store it properly, it can be useful for at least within 7 days. In the laboratory, the normal sperm stain blue and the sperm with chromatin damage stain green. The results are expressed by flow cytometric quantification. That is what it means that, for example, if you go to the next slide, you are going to get blue cells and green cells. And if you go back, you realize that the green cells are damaged and blue cells are normal. So you are not going to count this through flow cytometric method. You are not going to count this using your own manually. It's going to be assessed through flow cytometry and then counted, and then all the quantifications are done. So, for example, the damaged one versus the what do you call it, the normal ones, then they compute the percentages. All right. So that is just a little information I wanted to share with you. It's not any serious complex. It's except that it uses flow cytometry, and the technology. Once you don't have it here, it means that the sample may have to be sent to appropriate place. But you have to have an idea how to prepare the slide so that you don't get somebody, oh, this test, you don't do it here. They say they do it South Africa, so go to South Africa. No, the sample can just be collected on a slide and transported. Right. This is a summary of a lot of the things that we discussed already, especially the effect of chemicals. Now remember, we talked about the chemicals last week. This week, when you're talking about the factors that will cause have effect on spermatogenesis, I think here today we emphasize on the oxidative stress. The heat we discussed last week, chemicals we discussed last week. I remember that last week somebody was curious and asked, what about the chemicals we use in the labs? That's why I brought in this slide. So that when you're talking about chemicals that have the potential to affect spermatogenesis, they're not talking that these are chemicals that we know that they are already dangerous to some extent. And that's why I have this slide to help you. So phthalates are, we also call them plasticizers. Plasticizers are in the plastic industries. They are used as part of the chemical. They can be inhaled. If you inhale androgenic, what it means is that they will bind against the androgens. And what are the androgens? These are the testosterone. And remember that androgens and for that matter testosterone are produced by the lady cells, and lady cells, they are, no, if you go back a little bit, you realize that with the testicles, you have two major compartments. The seminiferous tubules, which is within the tube, and then outside it, you have the interstitial. That's where you have the lady cells. Lady cells, they produce the testosterone. Testosterone, their receptors are within the, are on the Sertoli cells, which are also within the seminiferous tubules. Okay, so, and we also realize that the seminiferous tubules, they also, the Sertoli cells, they also have receptors for the follicle stimulating hormones. So you need both the FSH and then the testosterone to be able to also help the germ cells to develop. And we realize that the germ cells will now be developing gradually to become the spermatids and then become the sperms. Now, so if some agent like the plasticizers, if you get to the blood, blocking the activity of the androgens and for that testosterone. So yes, the germ cells will be there, the Sertoli cells will also be there, but what they need to actually will be lacking, and therefore it means automatically the quantity. When we are talking about plasticizers, chemicals that are used in the plastics industry. So if you are somebody is working in the plastics industry, then with your knowledge, you will now have to advise that certain chemicals you people use in your industry will also have this effect. So if there's a way of preventing yourself, and they get into your body through the skin and through the inhalation. So of course, in that case, it means that you must have a protective clothing, and for that matter, lab coats or something. And for that matter, you should also have, for inhalation, you must also have a nose mask. Thank God with COVID, everybody is now very used to what do you call it, face mask. So that is about it. We have the bisphenol A. They are also polycarbonates. So those people who are exposed to plastics, it means that some of the other chemicals are also bisphenol A. Sorry. They can also be ingested, and they're also anti-androgenic. Cadmium. Cadmium is a chemical used in batteries and pigments. All right. And it can also be gotten through smoking and occupation. When you say occupational, it means that by the work that you do, if you work in the batteries industry or something, then it means that you could be exposed to cadmium. All right. And then those who smoke, they can also have cadmium into the body. A question you like to see? Accidents spillage in the lab, for as long as it doesn't fall into any of these categories, it means that they don't have any known effect on spermatogenesis. They could have some other effects. All right, they could have some other effects, but not on spermatogenesis. All right. So you see that all the chemicals that are used in our routine laboratories. So there should be no cause to scientists. I mean, you should be entertaining the risk of having challenges with spermatogenesis, which have been listed, which have been noted as causing effect of spermatogenesis. I'm not sure that these are chemicals that are used in the labs, so there shouldn't be any problem at all. Now, the cadmium will have blood testis barrier disruption and decrease the testosterone level. So what the cadmium does is to, and of course, almost the heavy metals. And you know that we said over and over again that as you know, the germ cells will develop to produce the no problem, but as they develop along the line, convert dapper cells to become what? Haploids. Haploids, which are the, I mean, one, and therefore the body will react to it. So at a tight junction that will prevent interaction between the immune system, which is in the blood, and whatever is in the seminiferous tubules. I'm sure you know this from the initial discussion that we did. Now, some of the chemicals are able to disrupt the blood-tested barrier. So if they are destroying the blood-tested barrier, what it means is that they are allowing contact with the what do you call it? With the immune system, with the immune system, and that could cause anti-sperm antibodies to be produced. Once you have anti-sperm antibody produced, then that will also disrupt the sperm development procedure. And even those that have been formed, because there's anti-sperm antibodies, they will clamp them together, and the sperms will come out aggregated rather than being single individual sperms. All right. So that is also the effect of cardio. And then dowsing or tetrachlorobenzopidazine, you can simply call it dowsing. They are also in the herbicides or pesticides or insecticides. Okay, those are occupational, and like when it's occupational by way of the way that we do, and of course these are farmers, people who use the herbicides to spray, and as you spray, they are likely to get them to the body, and then you can also ingest them. Sometimes you spray and they get onto your food, and before you could say Jack, with the farmers, they take minimal precautions on some of these things. So they will ingest them, they will just get them to the body. And they also have the tendency to also disrupt the blood-tested barrier. So once they disrupt the blood-tested barrier, they are also anti-androgenic. So it means that those who are using the herbicide, the pesticides, they must be very, very careful. Right. Lead, of course, all of us know about lead. It's a pigment in paints and fuel. Then they can also be healed, and they cause chromatin disruption. Remember, we said that chromatin, once you have during the spermatogenesis stage, where you have to move to become eccentric. The next stage is that having moved, they must condense. Okay, so if there is some of these chemicals, then they will rather disrupt the condensation procedure. And remember, we said that once the chromatin packing is disturbed, then they lead to DNA fragmentation. That's different from the DNA damage that's caused by oxidative stress. Here, you're talking about a situation where the DNA compartmentalization, and for that matter, condensation is compromised. Once they are compromised, they are subject to fragmentation. Okay, that is different from the oxidative stress that will cause their damage. I hope the point is clear. Right. Ethylene dibromide is also a fuel component and a fumigant, relation also through chromatin disruption. And then 1,2-dibromochloropropane is also a fumigant. So you see that all these things are associated with other plastics or herbicides or all those things. And of course, they are not laboratory related reagents. All right. They also cause an increased oxidative stress. So it's a table that should help you to allay your fears about possible use of laboratory reagents or chemicals that will affect sperm production in a laboratory practitioner. I hope the point is clear. So you remember that we did this one last week. I didn't bring the slide. I thought that we just said that there are certain chemicals that could compromise spermatogenesis. And I remember that a question came, what about the chemicals we use in the lab? It's on that basis that they decided to also bring in this information so that, I mean, it puts to rest any fear of working in the lab and likely contaminating yourself with a chemical that can affect spermatogenesis. I'm sure that this should put all the fears to rest. Right. And what is its importance? Sperm DNA chromatin integrity provides better diagnostic and prognostic approaches than standard semen parameters. We said this already. For this reason, identification of factors that disturbs sperm chromatin integrity and the mechanism of their action can help in recognizing the cause of male infertility. I'm sure that this information is also apt. I'm sure that it is also to tell us that sometimes in treating male infertility, it's not always about medication. But you can go in which will compromise. And what is it that will compromise sperm chromatin integrity? We've said that the major cause of sperm chromatin integrity is what? Oxidative stress. And we also talked so much about sources of oxidative stress. So if you're able to rule all those things out, they are very likely to also address some of the challenges that men are facing with respect to infertility. Now, there are certain factors that have also been known to be directly affecting spermatogenesis. They are described as being obese. You know this already, right? Now, so that's the foundation statement. How does it affect, if you're obese, how does it affect your sperm development? Obesity could affect sperm production based on two major mechanisms. And that's hyperestrogenism and hypoandrogenism. The mechanism that describes or that explains the basis for spermatogenic problem of spermatogenesis in obese people is hyperestrogenism and hypoandrogenism. I'm sure, I mean, there are technicalities that you can easily explain. High levels of estrogen. Hypoandrogenism, low levels of, and androgens here, we're talking about testosterone. So low levels of testosterone, as simple as that. And it's been well noted that in obese people, they always have high estrogen levels. And they always have low testosterone levels. These are established facts. Right. Now, so what accounts for these high levels of estrogens and low levels of this? Now, in obese men, levels of circulating estrogens are increased, and that's the hyperestrogenism, due to increased peripheral conversion of testosterone to estrogens. Now, it's been well noted that when we have an obese people, most of the time they have high adipose tissue. There's an enzyme in adipose tissue you call aromatase enzymes. Aromatase enzymes are able to convert testosterone to estrogen. You understand? You know, testosterone can also be converted to dihydrotestosterone. You know, the DHT. So the same way, what do you call it? Testosterone can also be converted to estrogen through the aromatase enzyme, which is very much available, abundant in adipose tissue. So it means that once the person is obese, it is well noted that he has high adipose tissue level, and therefore high level of aromatase enzyme, and therefore potential for the testosterone to be what? Converted to estrogens. And remember that estrogens will have a negative feedback. Estrogens will now have a negative feedback on the hypothalamic and then the pituitary. And so they will cause low levels of FSH. You see, when we say negative feedback, what it means is that the level of gonadotropin releasing hormone from the hypothalamic will slow down. Then the level of FSH and LH from the pituitary will also slow down. Because of negative feedback effect, FSH and LH is also reduced. Automatically, testosterone will also be reduced. And meanwhile, when testosterone is reduced, the small amount which will also come into the system is also converted from the testosterone back to estrogen. So you see that there will always be consistently low amount of what they call it, testosterone in the body. So that will account for the hypoandrogenism and hyperestrogenism. And these are known phenomenon in obese people. And therefore, the potential, the likelihood is that an obese individual is likely to have low sperm count. As simple as that. Very, very simple. All right. Okay. So you know that with low testosterone and FSH levels, spermatogenesis becomes defective. This is simple. I'm sure this shouldn't create any problem with anybody understanding it. All right. Now, we are not going to, for any examination, we are not going to explain explain how obese people becomes or explain the circumstances that will cause low sperm count in obese people. We are not going to do that. But for a purpose of examination, you should appreciate that you could ask some MCQs. Counsel your patients, because we are not going to just be doing semen analysis. We're going to have bigger information, knowledge that will help us to actually interact with our patients better. All right. And also to counsel them better. And also give a supporting kind of service to our clinicians so that they will know that, yes, master, you also know something. All right. So obesity obese people could be seen to have low sperm count. And I'm sure this explanation goes for it. All right. DM, diabetes mellitus. Diabetes is known to induce damage to various organs and systems, including the testes. I hope that point is clear. Diabetes, this is also a known fact that diabetes will induce damage to various organs and systems. And of course, testis is also one. So if you cause testicular damage, then of course, it will necessarily have effect on sperm development. So diabetic men have increased DNA fragmentation. All right. Not due to OS. We are talking about a situation where DNA packaging is compromised. Remember, we said that at the third stage of sperm development, third stage, well, first stage is the mitosis, second stage, meiosis, third stage, spermiogenesis, where the cell is no longer dividing, but a lot of developments, developmental changes are taking place with the cells. That will include the condensation of the chromatin, for that matter, the DNA. Now, it's been known that in diabetics, this is compromised, and so the DNA becomes fragmented. When DNA becomes fragmented, of course, it's like causing DNA damage, which is probably due to oxidative stress originating from increased levels of advanced glycation end products. The point here is that the suggestion is that the result of the fragmentation could also be, you know about glycation. When we say glycation, glycated, I'm sure you know about glycated hemoglobin. When we have glucose increasing in the body, it will combine with certain proteins. Okay, so we call that glycation. So if you have glycated hemoglobin is what do you call it? Hemoglobin is a protein, isn't it? In the RBCs. Now, if you have high levels of glucose, the excess glucose will attach to the hemoglobin, so it becomes glycated. So the combination, the addition of the glucose to the protein is called a glycation. So now you say that the hemoglobin has become glycated. And you know that hemoglobin, the reason why they say that glycated hemoglobin can be used to assess your sugar level for the your glucose level for the past 3 months is that now once the glucose, the excess glucose has glycated, has actually combined with the hemoglobin, RBCs has a lifespan of about 120 days. Okay, 120 days is about how many months? About 3 months, not it? 90 is between 90 to 120 days. The lifespan for hemoglobin is between 90 to, which is about 3 months. So it means that for as long as that RBC is not expired, has not been taken off the system, the glucose that glycated, glucose that actually attaches will still be there. So as scientists, these are the things that we need to understand. So glycated hemoglobin is the glycation is the combination of excess glucose to a protein. All right. So the explanation here is that there is an advanced glycation. It means that oxygen that are combined with other things, glucose has a tendency to also convert the groups. Remember, we said that oxygen is what the body needs. But if this oxygen is converted to something else, it becomes reactive oxygen. Okay, it becomes reactive oxygen, which is also dangerous for the body. So it is also assumed that in diabetics, apart from the DNA, which becomes compromised with respect to its packing, or for that matter, its condensation, there's also potential for the glycation or the excess glucose to also cause some oxidative stress. And for that matter, in diabetics, the probability of damaged, what do you call it? Damaged chromatin becomes high. And once that becomes high, it means that as we move, as I told you earlier, as we move on, we're going to talk about spermatogonia apoptosis, where the sperm will be tagged as likely to be dead. No, apoptosis program said that this cell will not live to its full maturity, even though it is not dead. But there's something which is tagging the cell to indicate that this cell will not survive. All right. So once you have all this is happening in diabetic patients, that means that their DNA will be compromised so much so that a lot of the cells will be tagged for apoptosis. And therefore, at the end of the day, their sperm development will be compromised. I hope the point is clear, ladies and gentlemen. Right. there are some few things I want us to go through here. So now you've seen the sperms have been formed, seen all the things that are likely to cause problem with the development and so forth and so on. Now, once the sperms have been formed, from the germ cell through the spermatocytes, through the spermatids to become the mature sperms, they will end at the tubules. Remember, and that is through the process called spermiation. I'm sure you understand it. You appreciate that. Spermiation is, we've said that the sperms, all this will be guided by the Sertoli cells. And so at the end of it all, the Sertoli cells must release them. Once they are released, they are still within the seminiferous tubules. Good. Now, let's see, there is something here which you must take note of. Let me see if I can get a pointer for you. Good. You see here, these are the lobules, and within the lobules, you have the seminiferous tubules. So the seminiferous tubules, there's what we call anastomosis. Anastomosis is where tubules will merge together. All right. These are small tubules. As they move along, they begin to merge. So they anastomose. All right. So all the tubules will now be joining together. Now, once they join together here, so these are the seminiferous tubules. All the tubules, many tubules will begin to be joining together. When they join together at this point, we call them the red testis. So red testis is also, it's not a testis, it's also a tubule. It's a combination of several of the seminiferous tubules, anastomosis, combining together. So if you have about 15 tubules, they all merge together and then begin to flow together as one tube. Okay, so red testis is not a testis. It's also a tubule, which is connecting several of the seminiferous tubules. Good. Now, so we have red testis as the osmosis of the several seminiferous tubules. Okay. Then they are also merging again. Okay. The red testis, they are seminiferous tubules merging. Okay. Now this one will also continue to merging so that they become fewer. So this fewer tubules is also now connecting the red testis to the epididymis. And remember, you see that this will become the initial segment, and for that matter, the head of the epididymis. So let's go back. The sperms are being produced with the seminiferous tubules. Okay, seminiferous tubules, there are several of them, plenty of them. Now, but we have only one tube, which is coiling itself together to form the epididymis. The seminiferous tubules, several seminiferous tubules combining together, anastomosis, joining together to form the red testis. The red testis are also plenty, so they also begin to also joining together as they move along. So they move along, they also join together to form fewer of the tubules, and these are called efferent ducts. Efferent means differential is different from vasa difference. Vasa difference will now take off from the end of the epididymis to become don't get confused. So these are things that you need to understand so that you will appreciate if you know these things, you love semen very, very well. All right. So now let's go. So spermatozoa exit the seminiferous tubules and travel to series of ducts. Okay. So we are now talking about red testis. I'm sure now you understand red testis. The red testis is the initial combination of the seminiferous tubules. Because the seminiferous tubules, there are several of them. You have to combine. When they combine, they give you the red testis. Red testis is not the tissue. Red testis are ducts. Sometimes we call it ductals. Ductals. When you add ULU at the end, it means